Okay, here's a short Biden clip that many are displeased with.
But even Dr. King's assassination did not have the worldwide impact that George Floyd's death did.
Controversial statement. If true, it illustrates how the virality of modern media can be used to elevate one who had threatened to shoot the belly of a pregnant woman above one nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize and elevated as the paragon of racial justice during the 60s. Many of the ADOS community, African descendants of slaves, are not pleased with this statement by Biden. But I'll point out that while King was in a league separate not only from people like Floyd, but most people in general, he was a person of faults, and perhaps very significant faults. Today's Steven Crowder stream, Top 5 Things You Didn't Know About MLK, covers some controversies surrounding this figure. So you click through the louderwithcrowder.com web link on that video. It will take you to notes for this particular episode that covers King. There is a concern with this individual named Stanley Levinson being a communist sympathizer who was one of MLK's top advisors. This ultimately led to the FBI targeting sources related to King, and then later King himself whenever he would go home or to other destinations that could be wiretapped. Clicking through this history link, you're taken to a history.com article on a topic of concern the United States government had that MLK was controlled by communists. I would say this article has a left-wing bias in how it paints the FBI's incursions. But despite that bias, I think ultimately the conclusions are true. I'll read a few relevant paragraphs. Members of the Kennedy administration, including President John F. Kennedy, later warned King personally to distance himself from Levinson and another suspected communist, Jack Odell, who worked for King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference. After King fired Odell in 1963 but continued to work with Levinson through an intermediary, Clarence Jones, Robert Kennedy authorized the wiretapping of Jones's home and offices as well. In October of 1963, Robert Kennedy authorized installation of wiretaps in King's Atlanta home and the SCLC offices with the understanding that the FBI was continuing to investigate his suspected communist ties. Within months, however, the Bureau expanded its surveillance of King, placing bugs and wiretaps in hotel rooms he visited. The expansion reflected the FBI's new objective, collecting evidence of King's extramarital activities in order to sully his reputation and weaken him as a leader of the civil rights movement. This is the most biased sentence here, I believe. However, it is supported by the following paragraphs. At a press conference in November 1964, Hoover called King the most notorious liar in the country, prompting King to defend himself in the press and seek a meeting at the director's office to diffuse tensions. After the two men met for more than an hour in Hoover's office in early December, King told reporters he and Hoover had enjoyed a quite amicable discussion. His aide, Andrew Young, who was present at the meeting, later recalled that there was not even an attitude of hostility. So imagine that, a Cloud9 conversation between MLK and Hoover. But look at this. Meanwhile, Hoover's FBI took one of its most shocking actions toward King. A few days after Hoover's press conference, Sullivan drafted an anonymous letter to the civil rights leader suggesting intimate knowledge of his alleged you-know-what activities. Through agents, he sent the letter to King in Atlanta, along with a tape recording supposedly documenting some of those extramarital encounters. So in this context, you see that Hoover was very two-faced, playing things off one way, like everything is A-okay between the two men, but then not holding back the FBI, which he controlled, from engaging in a blackmail op on King. Though the FBI stopped wiretapping King's home in April 1965 and his office the following year, it continued investigating him all the way up until his assassination in Memphis on April 4, 1968. The extent of the FBI's campaign attempt to use King's personal life against him, including the infamous letter, as it became known, first came to light in 1976, 4 years after Hoover's death, with the damning report of the Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities, popularly known as the Church Committee. I will also note that something else that comes up during this episode of Louder or Crowder is an allegation that King was physically present and condoned the taking away of the innocence of a young lady by another individual, even encouraging the action. An audio of this is to be released in 2027.
Official biographer on MLK. He won the 97 Pulitzer Prize. So this is a man who was very pro. Did I say?
You said 90, 87.
87.
Yeah.
And the FBI surveillance audio will be released in 2027. I don't know why they picked that year. I have no idea.
Specific year?
Later, you know. Yeah. They're like, oh crap, it's getting closer.
So here's something that you probably know that MLK, for example, let's start with this. Supported peaceful protest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So specifically, he witnessed a Baptist minister take the innocence of a parishioner this FBI tape supposedly exists at the National Archives vault. If such a piece of evidence is a smoking gun, the release of which would completely tarnish the legacy of this man, would it make MLK irredeemable? You have to look at a man's full record, the good and the ill, to determine if there are certain aspects that outweigh the others in significance. Personally, I don't think the Bureau fared much better in credibility at this time period than they do presently. But I guess we'll find out. That's all. Peace.